Today's episode is brought to you by Peddlers. Are you crafting crazy, a lover of all things quilting and sewing? Share your passion for creativity in what you wear. Peddlers is the place to choose pins, charms, and jewelry to make the perfect creative statement. Use the code NAPS, NAPS, to save 15% off your next stock order at pinpeddlers.com. Peddlers. Love what you do, wear what you love. Thank you so much, Pin Peddlers. And now, here's the show. Welcome to episode 109 of the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Today, we're talking about building a sewing community with my guest, Shea Henderson. A former middle school math teacher, Shea now owns Empty Bobbin Sewing Studio, a sewing and quilt pattern company. She's the author of the award-winning book, School of Sewing, Learn It, Teach It, Sew Together. And her work has been featured in several books and magazines. She's also one of the founding members and a former president of the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild. She lives in Kansas City with her husband and 3 children, and you can find more of her work at emptybobbinsewing.com and on Instagram at emptybobbin. Shea Henderson, welcome.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I know. We've been online friends for a while, a couple of years, I think. And it's great to have the chance to sit down and really talk. And so let's start from the beginning. So have you always been a Kansas City resident, or where did you grow up?
I grew up in a smaller community about an hour north of Kansas City and met my husband in college at a state university here in Missouri. And we've lived in Kansas City pretty much ever since. We had a small 1-year stint in San Diego with a job he had, but we've always kind of been Kansas City people.
Got it. And what did your parents do for a living when you were growing up?
My mom is a middle school teacher because apples don't fall far from trees. So she is a middle school teacher, is retired for many years now. And my dad owns a landscaping company in our hometown. Okay. So that's kind of my story. Yeah. A little entrepreneur, a little teaching. So.
Yeah, I know, right? It's interesting to see how this all comes together, and landscaping's got that creativity, as does teaching as well. So, and did you have siblings?
Yes, I have one younger sister, so she's 6 years younger than me. So I just have a sister, and my husband just has a brother. So we've got some smaller
families.
Yeah.
And what did you study when you went to college and met your husband? I know you taught math, so were you a math major, or did you study something else?
I had several majors, but not as bad as my mom was when she was in school. She said her grandma used to tell her she was a member of the Major of the Month Club. I started out as a photography major, and I decided I didn't really want to do it as a business. I just loved photography in general. So then I switched maybe 1 or 2 more times, but I eventually stopped at middle school education, and it's with a minor in math. So I decided middle school is where I wanted to be. I had worked at a camp when I was just out of high school, a student council leadership camp in Missouri. It's amazing. And I had so much fun with middle school kids that I thought I have a special love for middle school kids. So most people think that's crazy, but
I don't, because I share that love because I also taught middle school. And I definitely heard people say to me, oh God, that age is the worst. I'm like, no, it's the best.
It is the best. I mean, you have to have a little bit of middle school left in you, but I think middle school's fantastic. So
yeah, I do too. I really like that age. And it's interesting that you studied photography, because I just took some photography classes in high school, but I feel like now we find ourselves in this moment in which photography is so incredibly important.
Yes.
In almost every business, no matter what kind of business you're running, because you need this social media presence. And so much of doing that well is about quality photography. And it's funny because I feel like, when we were younger, it was really something people did maybe as a hobby, or it was going to be your professional career. But now it's really a skill that everybody needs.
Right. And just the rise of digital photography versus film, it made it more affordable in so many ways because you could try and experiment with your camera, whereas you had to wait for so long and, film. You had only had so many frames. So it's been interesting to see it happen because I started when I was majoring in photography, it was still film and starting to become digital. So like we still had the dark room, So I would love for my kids to learn to work in a dark room one day, just because um, I think it's an interesting skill to know and understand and know how far it's come and how easy it is to use your digital camera now. But just an appreciation for that, I think, is important too.
Yeah, that's almost become like an art form
Yeah,
piece of it.
agreed. Yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
more tactile.
Mhm.
Yes, that my classes were also in the dark room.
Yep.
So that we're dating ourselves,
Dating
but
ourselves.
okay. So out of college, did you do student teaching and then just got a job as a middle school math
Yep.
teacher?
I actually did my student teaching in the building where I ended up teaching. So I've only really been in one school. So yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's
And
what
how long were you there?
I was there for 7 years, and this will be my 8th year out. So it's almost seems like a former lifetime ago, but yeah, I absolutely loved it.
Isn't
Awesome
that
building, awesome people.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing when that happens.
Yes,
So the period of time when you had a traditional job becomes
yes,
shorter than the period of
yes.
time that you've had a non-traditional job. And that
Weird.
happened, yeah, that happened for me as well. And it's like, wow, I've been out of the workforce for, 13 years or something. But
Mhm.
then again, of course, I'm in the workforce, but it's just such a different kind of work.
Yes, it is different. It just feels like like it was a different life. Like it was amazing. And people ask if I'll go back, and I always say I don't know because I never really imagined leaving it. So, um, I would learn to say never. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, life has seasons. So why did you leave? What was that transition like?
Right. I never imagined leaving. I thought I viewed myself as a lifelong teacher. My husband at the time, my husband at the time, he's still my husband at that time. My husband was a consultant and was traveling all the time. And so he was gone Monday through Thursday, and we'd had two children very close in age. And I just knew that I was going to be a bad wife or a bad mom or a bad teacher. And I could give up one of those things, but I couldn't give up the other two. So I decided with him to stay home. And that's kind of when it happened. It was after our second child was born. So,
Okay, and before the third one came.
yes, yes,
So,
yeah.
okay. So, yeah, I can relate to that feeling for sure. And it's also, frankly, I found to be difficult when you are a teacher, because the amount of money that you're earning in comparison to the amount of money you would have to pay a childcare provider, especially once you have more than one child,
Yes,
that balance really is, you end up basically working and
paying
not
someone.
making any
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. We have our two oldest kids are 16 months apart. So two little kids in daycare is, it's not cheap. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
also a contributing factor.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's somewhat different if your job is like a really big income earner. Obviously, there's other things that you get from a job besides money,
Right.
but
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
yeah. But did you have, I mean, it sounds like you really enjoyed teaching and being in the
Oh, I did.
classroom
I
and
really
this,
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
stimulating. And it also is
Hmm.
really an identity, where you're the teacher. So was there like, I don't know, kind of an identity shift for you when that
Oh, yeah.
transition happened?
Yeah. Actually, what's funny, my husband and I were just having a conversation about this just this weekend about, a shift of identity, So, yeah, it really was. It was a big part of who I was. People say, "Oh, so tell me about yourself." Well, the first thing you say is kind of what you do typically, that and about your family. So yeah, it was different feeling for sure.
Hmm.
But it
Yeah.
definitely one where we both felt like it was wholeheartedly the right thing to do, and I don't regret one bit of leaving. So
Yeah.
I miss it, but I don't regret it. And I love now being able to go help in my kids' classrooms or help in other friends' classrooms and things like that. So
Okay. So you started sewing at some point along the way, because I don't hear sewing as being something that, you didn't want to be a fashion designer or something like that in
right.
college. And so,
No,
so talk a little bit about your sort of sewing training or sewing history,
gotcha.
throughout your life.
Gotcha. Well, I grew up, my mom knew how to sew. Like she made her own rehearsal dinner dress. She made a lot of her own formals. She grew up sewing a lot of apparel and then would make a lot of our Halloween costumes and make certain things for our house. She'd not made a quilt. I think I actually made my first quilt before my mom made her first quilt, which is kind of interesting. But I always grew up with her working on her sewing machine. And she taught me here and there, some things I didn't really want to hear about pressing and how important that was. I was like, whatever, mom, like you don't want to listen to the thing that you think is not important. And then I was in high school and my grandmother helped me make a quilt in secret for my parents. And it was a photo quilt, a picture quilt of Christmas pictures. And this was before like when I think back now to how I did it, it was the most ridiculous process. You couldn't just print on spoon flour. You had to get the pictures color copied in mirror image. Like you couldn't get the regular picture. You had to do mirror image because if it had any words, when you transferred it to fabric, they'd be backwards. So you had to get a mirror image color copy of any picture you wanted. You put this glue pasty stuff on it. And then you pressed that onto fabric, let it dry. And then once it was dry, you soaked it off with a sponge to basically peel off the paper so that what was left was the color ink glued to the fabric. It was insane. And so I snuck up to my grandparents' house one weekend and they helped me make a quilt. And so then I just kind of got addicted to learning how to make things. And it got really more of a passion in late college and right after my husband and I got married, because everybody I was working with was having a baby. And, I rather innocently thought, I'll just make everybody a baby quilt. Doesn't take that much money in fabric. So you learn a lot when you make a lot of baby quilts in a very short period of time. And, I kind of got the bug then for quilting over anything. And that was right about the time, I was like in 2005 when the big books that I think of as pivotal and influential for me, and many people I think say these same books, was Modern Quilt Workshop from Weeks Ringel and Bill Kerr and Denise Schmidt quilts. When those came out, I was like, these are the books this is exactly what I want to make. So
yeah, which by the way, I have both of those books and bought them both when they came out and they're sitting here still on my shelf. So
yeah, those are not going anywhere. I will never, ever, ever give those away.
Yeah, totally. So those baby quilts, were you using patterns from those books or were you using a traditional block or were you sort of designing them from the start?
Well, the first ones I made were before those books came out. So I made some of them from traditional blocks. And then toward the end of the baby quilt phase, I had both of those books. So several of them were made made a lot of quilts from those two books.
Yeah. And I think that you have a really good point there, which is that making a lot of something teaches you a lot, and sometimes I feel like we give up so soon where we run into frustration or it doesn't come out the way we had it envisioned in our minds. And then we think, well, I'm no good at this. Right. But really, if you made, 15 more of them, you would get good at it,
Exactly. In fact, the funny thing is one of the people who got one of the very first baby quilts is my friend Sarah, who actually ended up later on taking the pictures for the covers of my patterns. And I think, oh my gosh, if I could go back and redo baby quilt for her daughter, who's now in middle school, it'd be good to have a redo. But, everybody's got to have their early work.
Yeah. And at that moment, that was what you could do. And you were happy enough with it that you gave it to her. So, yeah, totally. And so, okay, so you started making these quilts and got these two very, influential books that really changed the way people thought about, or at least many people thought about quilting. And so you started a blog as well in 2007, Empty Bobbin Sewing Studio. What was the impetus for starting the blog?
I think it was because I had found the pool on Flickr, Fresh Modern Quilts, and I saw there were other people out there making the kinds of quilts I love to make. And there were other, bags and things too, but mostly quilts. And I didn't know anyone who loved to sew the things I love to sew, other than my own mom. And for a long time, it took me a very long time to use my name. I was kind of like this anonymous, like, over empty bobbin made this, like
Yeah, well, it's
I
hard,
didn't,
it's hard for people to get back to that time on the
yeah,
internet. But
yeah.
first, I just want to say that Flickr pool was so influential. And you're not
Hmm.
the first
Oh,
person on this podcast
for
who
sure.
was introduced to modern quilting through that pool. And I think it's true too that we can trace, at least to a degree, the modern quilt movement and the modern
Oh,
quilt guild
totally.
to that Flickr pool.
Mhm.
With
Completely.
yeah.
Completely. Like, I think Elisa may have been one of the first people, Elisa Haight Carlton may have been one of the first people to comment on my blog. She and Kathy Mack, who used to own Pink Chalk Fabrics.
Yeah.
I just like, it's goes way back. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And back then, yes, people were anonymous or
Mhm.
they used kind of, a name for themselves that was like their name, but wasn't their name. So I was
Right.
Abby Jane. My middle name is Jane. And that was my name everywhere. Like I didn't use my actual last name.
Right.
And then at some point it sort of shifted. So
Right. Right. At some point, it's like, you know what, this is, who I am. And part of it was I taught middle school students. So I kind of wanted to have a little anonymity, like, Googling my name or whatever. I wanted to have just a little piece that was just me that, I could share what I wanted and put stuff out there. And I just loved that community. It was a wonderful kind of period of life. I didn't have kids yet. I was sewing all the time. My husband was starting to travel a lot. So really it was like me and my sewing machine hanging out. So,
right. Okay. So you started documenting what you were making.
yes, absolutely. I loved having a way to record, who I made things for and what I made and what they looked like, because I'm not much of a scrapbooker at all, nor I certainly am not now. But just having it there, because once you give a quilt away, unless you took pictures of it or jotted some things down, it's just in your memory, and you might forget that you actually made that person a quilt. So having a
Mm-hmm.
record was great.
And did you find that you were building community through that blog from the beginning?
I thought so, because and what's funny, like, there are people that I am Facebook friends with now that, we knew each other as blog people, like, Rebecca Kraft. We would comment on each other's pictures all the time. And then we finally met for the first time at QuiltCon a few years ago. And it was like, it had been like, we'd been knowing each other on the internet for like 10 years. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah, I always feel like when I go to those events, it's like I feel like in a way you've been following the playbill, for years, like really, really
Yes.
carefully, and then you walk into this room and it's like all the characters are there. You know what I'm
That's a funny
saying?
way to put it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny. I totally get that.
It's
Yeah.
like they walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, they're real people.
Yeah. Well, and like, it's just fun to talk to somebody that you've emailed back and forth with, and you know what they're making. Like their neighbors probably don't know what they're making, but you know what they're making. So I think that's
Yeah, yeah, and blogging is really a wonderful thing that way. So you had these two things overlapping. You were teaching
interesting.
and blogging at the same time. And so when you left the classroom, did having the blog help you?
It did. And at the same time I left the classroom was when we did our little 1 year stint in San Diego. Like, we were kind of living in a temporary apartment, just for my husband to finish up a contract out there. But for us to be together, except for, only seeing each other on the weekends, we just put our stuff in storage, sold our house, and moved out there. And so our kids could be with me and him. And it was just us. It was wonderful. It was like this blissful year where there were no big distractions. We weren't going in 15 million different directions. It was just us. But while he was gone and they were napping, while she naps,
Absolutely.
while they were napping, I would sew and continue to write. And that's when the seed started for writing patterns, because it combined my love of math, my love of teaching, and sewing. One of my friends would tell you, it's also my love of telling people what to do. I like being in charge, but you can be in charge when you write a pattern. You can help people, guide them the way that, will get them to a finished product. So
I want to take a moment now to talk about our sponsor, Pin Peddlers, and Kimberly Foreman, who is the sales rep from Pin Peddlers, is here to talk with us.
My name is Kim Foreman, and I work for Pin Peddlers. We are a company that makes pins and charms that are hand enameled and done with semi-cloisonné enamel.
Oh, wow. So they're kind of like enamel pins been hot, right? So they're kind of like enamel pins, but made specifically for quilters?
We do make pins specifically for quilters. In fact, we're the #1 seller of quilting pins and charms. Some of my favorite necklaces we carry right now are a thimble and bobbin necklace that has little chains that hang down from the thimble and bobbin, and people like to collect their charms there.
Oh, that's really cute. Yeah. There's some of the enamel pin designs are also super charming and cool looking. And there's one that's like kind of an old fashioned looking sewing machine. I love that one.
That's one of our most popular, along with our sewing machine charm holder that looks like that antique machine.
And where are you guys based?
We are based in Hamilton, Missouri. We're part of Missouri Star Quilt Company now. The original company, started by Tommy and Audrey Brindle from North Carolina, has been around for over 30 years. And they met the Missouri Star people at quilt shows and wanted to retire and asked if Missouri Star would be wanting to take over the business. Well, we also do custom pins and charms. We actually do quite a few quilting businesses, guilds, museums. We do the National Quilt Museum in Paducah. We do all of the pins for Quilt Market and festivals like at Houston, Chicago, St. Louis.
Oh, that's so neat. So if a small business listening wanted to have some pins made of their logo or, just to sell like a particular design they have in mind, they could get in touch and see if that would be possible?
Yeah, they sure can. And it's something that's really, it's small to wear. So it's an easy way to get your branding out there for everyone to see. You can go to pinpeddlers.com, and you can also call our 800 number, which is 800-841-8691.
Thank you so much, Pin Peddlers. And now back to my conversation with Shea. Yeah, and I want to talk about your print patterns in just a moment, but I do want to touch on the teacher training and the ways that it still is useful for you now, whether you're writing patterns, writing books, actually teaching, mostly probably adults to sew and quilt, or working with the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild, or whatever it is you do in the sort of sewing sphere, even blogging. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some specific things you learned as a teacher or in teacher training that still are relevant in what you do day to day now?
Right. Okay. That's a great question. I think that probably the two big things are knowing, one of my favorite things to teach in my math classes was problem solving. And kids don't know what they don't know because when they're looking at a problem and they can't jump to the answer right away because they don't know all the things that will get them there in the middle. Sewing's kind of the same way. Like, you see this project you want to make, but you don't realize until you start sewing what it is that you don't know how to do. Like, you might think, oh, there's a zipper, I have to learn how to put a zipper in, but you might not know all the other things that are techniques and things that you need to do to finish the project. So helping people realize what it is that they need to understand is a big deal. Helping you know what you don't know. Like, my friend Pam in my sewing classes was like, how do I know if it's the problem with the seam is something that I can just, breeze right on by, or how do I know if it's a problem that I have to unpick the seam and fix it? So those are things that you just don't know until you start sewing a little bit. And then you start to realize, oh, that's a seam that will be hidden. I can move past it. Or, oh, I'm going to have to go back and fix that. So that's one. Another one is visuals. I think that's a really big thing. Not everyone, and I think everybody understands this, but not everyone can just read the text and understand exactly what it is. So a visual is a big thing. And so illustrations and pictures were a big thing for me as a teacher and also in the sewing world.
Yeah. And I think you're totally right. In my experience of teaching sewing as well, many people who are really real beginners, they get hung up on the perfection of a seam that isn't going to matter. So they're like, well, it's slightly curved and I want to sit and unpick it. And it's like, well, you're going to slow down your progress and also your enjoyment because you're not going to get to the next stage. And, you're being hung up on something that's not important. And so knowing what is important is so hard. So that's a great point. And I have also found like scaffolding is really important. So
Yes.
it's
Mhm.
important for people to talk in the beginning about what they think something is and what they
Yes.
already know about
Yep.
it in order
Yep.
for them to hook new information onto that. Because if you fail to elicit that information in the
Yes.
beginning, you're presenting new information and people are trying to hook it on to something and you don't know what.
They have no
And
idea.
sometimes
Yep.
it's the wrong thing. And so it's really important to sort of get all of that out into the room first.
Yes.
And that's
I
something I learned as a
completely,
teacher.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really like blessed that I got that time in the classroom and that formal training, just because it does help me a lot as I do anything else
Absolutely.
in my
Absolutely.
life, even though I'm not explicitly using it. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about these print patterns. You have a really nice like suite of print patterns. You've got many and they're beautifully photographed and they look really lovely. And I wondered if you could just sort of talk a little bit for listeners who might want to get into doing print patterns and are wondering, how do I develop one of these and how do I
Right.
publish one of these? Sort of just talk a little bit about that process and how it happens.
Sure. Well, like I said, it was the time when we were living in San Diego, and I was sewing some things with some patterns, and I, most of them, a great many of them, and most of them were completely accurate and wonderful and perfect. And then I sewed with some, and I was thinking to myself, well, they just assumed like 5 steps in between here and there. Like what is going on here? So I started to think, I know how to sew. I know how to write instructions. I think I'm really great with math. I thought I could do this. So I decided to start writing some, and I had some people in my guild test them for me, and had my mom, of course, test them for me, and kind of just started going from there. It was me and my computer and my sewing machine, and emailing back and forth with people, and uh, at first I did all the layout and design and everything myself in Illustrator and InDesign, and I outsourced the photography. That was one thing I was like, in the logo, a guy that lived on my floor my freshman year of college, he worked in advertising, and at the time, now I could never afford him, but at the time he was doing some freelancing and designed my logo and everything for me. And so the cover of I can't take any credit for the covers, except for the actual product that's being photographed. And then I had them printed and shipped them from my house, and just added some here and there. I don't do them as much anymore because I kind of like it was a different season.
Yeah.
Because I had 2 kids who were napping, and now I have 3 kids, and none of them nap, and they're all in every kind of activity. So I don't have as much time to devote to it anymore. But I really loved doing it, and then I added the PDF component, but the print component came first.
Okay. And so you were saying that in the beginning you did all of the layout
Mhm.
yourself in InDesign and Illustrator, and then did you begin outsourcing that as well?
Well, no, for as far as the ones that are printed now, they're all still done in the file that I made. And then, PDF ones, just in the last several months, I worked with Christy at Page and Pixel, and she developed a template for me to kind of update the layout of my PDFs. And I need to convert all of my old ones over to the new format, and then those will be on the website. But I just wanted them to kind of have a fresh look that I couldn't do myself. So she was awesome. I would totally
Yeah.
plug her for anybody who's thinking about that.
Absolutely. And Page and Pixel is a company that has 2 people who used to be employed at C&T Publishing and now are on their own. And basically, they'll do your photography, they'll do your
Mm-hmm.
photo styling, they'll do the
Mm-hmm.
layout and design of the actual pattern pages. So it's wonderful to have contractors who truly understand quilting
Yes.
on your team and who can make your product look professional. And I know that when I first started, I really would look at other people who are already successful and think they had to do all of this themselves. And if I
Yeah.
can't do all of it myself, then I can't
Yep.
do this. And that's
Yep.
not true.
Right. And sometimes you can try to, if you want to do it yourself to quote unquote save money, like time is money, and like the finished look is money. I think that like the photography and the logo, I could have done them myself, but it wouldn't have been nearly what it ended up being. So it's a matter of, deciding how much you could afford to do and pick and choose what things you want to outsource. But I totally think that there are plenty of people who work in this space that overlaps enough with sewing to get it. Like my friend that did our pictures, she was our family photographer, and her studio was like 2 blocks down from a fabric shop. So when I asked her if she could take the covers, she got a little nervous. But then I walked her down to the shop to show her, it needs to be portrait, not landscape, and you got to have some room, leave some space for the title or the name of the project and my logo. And so once she saw some examples, then she's like, oh yeah, we totally got this. And then when she did them, I was just blown away. I loved what she did. So
yeah,
she did say it made her more nervous working with a quilt that held still than with a family of little kids.
That's funny. Yeah. Which you would think would be the opposite. But yeah, I mean, product photography is a different beast, right? Than portrait photography, for sure. So sometimes a photographer would have to shift gears a little bit. But I was going to say that I think that, anyway, you can outsource some of this. You can get somebody else to help you. And also, I was going to say the photography really sells the product. So
totally. I wasn't going to mess that up.
Yeah. If you can afford to invest a little bit in the upfront to get professional photos done, or you can swap with somebody who can do professional photos for you, that then can be consistent from pattern to pattern, as far as quality is concerned or style. It does really make a big difference, and you're going to make it up in the end in the number of sales you're going to make. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have done bartering as well. In fact, some of the earlier quilts that I had for one of my earlier patterns, I ended up bartering baby clothes or kids' clothes with Angela Walters. We live very close to each other, and her youngest daughter is just a little bit younger than my oldest. And so she had, needed some kids' clothes. And so I was like, I need some quilting. So we swapped. So it's totally something that people should look into is,
yeah,
thing.
Especially when you're first starting out and maybe don't have the capital to put in, from profits that you're already making in the very beginning. You might not have anything to invest. Right. So some of those trades do make sense in the, whatever skills you have in the beginning. So it is worth it to launch with a professional product. So I feel like one of the strengths that you really have is in developing community. And I want to make sure we spend some time talking about that. And first, you just mentioned Angela Walters. So you live in Kansas City,
yes.
Which, my goodness, I mean, I haven't been to Kansas City, but I feel like it just seems like a place with such a strong artist community. And, Hallmark is headquartered there, which probably gives kind of an anchor in a way, I imagine, of like all of these incredibly artistic people who work for Hallmark, and maybe they're artistic spouses and kids and everything. But there also just seems to be a really strong maker community in general.
There absolutely is. And it's interesting, like in the last several years, especially in the sewing industry, books that have come out, a lot of people have written books that live in Kansas City, and they're all people I know. They're my friends from Quilt Guild that, we've all been friends for many years. And it's just really fun to see that happen with everybody, and not just in the sewing community, but, the maker community in general. That Kansas City is, there are a lot of things to love about it. And one of the things that I think attracts a lot of people who are creatives is that it's got a low cost of living. You're not going to be unable to afford to live somewhere. And there are a lot of people in a concentrated area. It's not a huge metropolitan area. It doesn't take forever to get from one spot to the other. And, there's a lot of people that live and work near downtown or, in the Crossroads area. There's it's called the Crossroads area in Kansas City. There's a lot of artists and different types of media that are working there. And it's just a neat hub and a neat way to like go look at other artists with the people that you do this other type of art with. It's a very fun place to be.
Yeah. And the Kansas City Star, featured quilts for years in the newspaper, which I found to be really fascinating too.
Absolutely, they did. And I think that it's interesting to see people use traditional methods or traditional blocks like that and spin them around and do new things with them. And there are a lot of guilds in the area, and some of them, are one of the people that was in my guild worked for Kansas City Star Books whenever they were publishing books in the craft industry, in the craft world. So there's a lot of overlap in Kansas City and art.
Yeah, really cool. So that takes me to the founding of the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild, which it sounds like you were pretty instrumental in working on. And I'm sure that was a huge job, but probably a pretty satisfying one to see a community that you built continue on. So you want to talk a little bit about what that was like and how you sort of gathered that first group?
Sure. And in fact, I can take like a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the credit, but there's a lot of people who kind of came together like a perfect storm, really. I had seen because of blogs being a thing back in the day, I'd seen Elisa and Latifa post about the LA Modern Quilt Guild having its first meeting. And I think I saw that in like October of 2009, which coincidentally was the same month that my middle son or my middle child was born. And so, I'm in this like newborn stupor of like not getting sleep. And I see these posts about this guild and I think, oh my gosh, I would love to have that. And right around the same time, Jackie Gehring had posted something on her blog that made me realize that she lived in the Kansas City area, because I didn't realize that she lived near Kansas City. So I sent her an email, having never met her, and said, hey, are you seeing what they're doing in LA? I totally think we should do that. And so we emailed back and forth. I still have those emails. And I was like, I just had a baby. I'm on maternity leave until January. I think want to get together. So we met at a Panera, and my Graham, my now 8-year-old, was in a little infant carrier, and we kind of hashed out an organizational meeting, and the organizational meeting happened in December, and we had our first official meeting in January of 2010. And the people that were at that first meeting, Lauren Hunt, I met for the very first time. She ended up taking the pictures for my book. Alex Ledgerwood, who I count as one of my very dear friends from Quilt Guild. She was there. She now has a book in the sewing world. It was just an interesting storm of people that were all there. And I think there were like 32 of us. And now the guild has grown to, well over 150 or 175 people.
Wow.
And it's a lot of fun. And it's just, people were so excited to meet people in person that they either maybe had heard about or maybe had read their blog, but just to have another person and someone when you say, hey, look, I made this. If you say that to your neighbor, they might say, oh, neat. But you say, hey, look, I made this, to somebody who gets it. It's like an instant connection. So I remember that day in that meeting. I will always remember that. It was a very fun day. We left there thinking, this is going to be so fun.
So who were they? Who are the people, and maybe who are they now? The people who come to or are part of the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild, are they younger people? Are they, women, men, people from all different backgrounds? I'm just wondering who they are.
Right. It's a really amazing and wonderful mix of people of all ages. There are people my age, people younger than me, my mom's age, older than my mom. There are men, couples. There are people who work in fields not related to any kind of art at all. There are people that work at Hallmark, or are spouses of people who work at Hallmark or other creative locations. And I think that that's what makes it great, is that it's a mix of people of, all different types and ages. And it's almost more of a regional guild, if you ask me, because you have people from Kansas and Missouri, because Kansas City straddles both states. We have one of the officers now drives down from Omaha, Nebraska. So there are people that come from, an hour out. Like my mom would have to drive over an hour to get to the guild. So it's kind of a regional thing, really, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And it's neat to hear that it's a really diverse group of people. I think that one of the things that quilting is battling is the stereotype of who is a quilter. But I think if you really look, and it doesn't take that much looking, you'll see that quilters are everyone. There's lots of different people
Absolutely.
involved.
And it's just, I think they're also some of the most funny people I have been around because, I mean, show and tell, when people are showing a quilt and, describing it, there's always something funny that people, and if you ask me for example, I wouldn't be able to come up with one right now, but it's part comedy hour, part quilt build meeting.
Sounds pretty entertaining. Yeah.
It's fun. It's a good group. I don't get to go nearly as often as I want anymore, but I absolutely love the nights that I do get to go.
And so I want to make sure we talk about School of Sewing. So you wrote this book. It came out in 2014. It was published by Lucky Spool. And it is a totally unique book, I think, because besides being a how-to sewing book, which we're all really familiar with, it's also got this like narrative arc where you brought together a group of strangers and then taught them to sew. And in the process, they become friends. And you kind of like, it's almost like reality TV in a way. You like take us through their journey. So talk about like that. What was the concept? Did this like occur to you one day? And then how it became this book?
Yes. Okay. So, there are many ways that people write books, and there are many ways that people send in proposals and think about books. This book, I don't know, it kind of broke whatever mold I had in my mind for how books happen. So I have been asked, and I think that probably anybody who sews has been told by somebody that they know, oh, I have a sewing machine. I just don't know what to do with it. Or I don't know how to use it. Or it's, I got it from my aunt or my grandma and it just sits in a closet. That happens to so many people because I feel like sewing skipped a generation for many people, not for everyone, but for many people. And so in a matter of about a 2 to 3 week period, I had 8 different friends, neighbors, childhood friends, people I used to work with that had said to me something about how they had the sewing machine, they just don't know how to use it, and it typically was followed by, could you teach me? So I used to just send people like a list of, oh, here's where you could go to, check out a class. But I thought, it's like the sign that the universe like hitting you on the side of the head when that many people ask in a short period of time. So I thought, okay. So I sent them all an email and I said, if you're serious about wanting to learn, I am serious about wanting to teach you. So here's what I would propose. And I say we should get together once a month for a year. We'll do one project each time. They'll be small. They'll be useful. And in the end, you are going to make a quilt and you will like it. So that's kind of where we started. And so they came over to my house the first night and I posted a picture on Instagram of them around my kitchen table. My mom came as my teacher's assistant to give me a second set of hands. So Rhett, our youngest, was a newborn. He was just a baby, like 4 months old or something. And we kind of went from there. So we were a couple months into it. And then my husband and I were on our way across Missouri, across I-70 to St. Louis to my niece's birthday party. And I get this email on my phone from Suzanne, and I wasn't able to go to market that year. And she said, oh, I was hoping to meet with you. I'm starting this publishing company. I'd love to get a book proposal from you.
And we should just clarify that this is Suzanne Woods, who owns and is the publisher of Lucky Spool. But Lucky Spool at that time, it sounds like was just becoming a thing.
It was just becoming a thing. Mm-hmm. Yes. So yes, thank you for clarifying.
No problem.
Sure people know Suzanne Woods, Lucky Spool. So she said, I'd love to talk to you and get a book proposal from you. And she and I had talked off and on just as casual acquaintances from the quilt market industry, just because of my sewing pattern business for a couple of years. So we knew each other, but I had not known about Lucky Spool yet. So she sent that email and I read it while my husband had gone over to the counter at the food court at the Columbia Mall where we stopped for lunch. He was in line to get lunch. I was wrangling 3 kids at the table and I read that email and I thought, I know exactly what book I would propose, because I wanted there to be a book that I could work through with my students and my friends. I call them my students. They're my friends. So I wanted to have a book that I could work project by project through with them. But I knew that we wanted to do small things that were instantly useful and that did not involve apparel, because I knew there were so many different sizes. I didn't want to specify women. I wanted, a good cross section of projects. So looking at this email, he's still getting food. He comes back with this tray of food. And I was like, I literally said to him, a lot has happened while you
That's a great story.
I was like, you need to sit down.
The whole world has changed while
The
you were
whole world
over there.
shifted while you were getting sandwiches. So, between Columbia and St. Louis, which is the second half of the trip from Kansas City to St. Louis, I didn't have a piece of paper or pencil, so I wrote the book proposal on his iPad. And I wrote Lauren Hunt would take the pictures, and I wrote down all the projects that we do, and I'd say the girls will be in the story, their stories will be woven into it. So I wrote her an email back when we got back to Kansas City at the end of the weekend. And I said, I know exactly what I would want to write, and this is it. And if you do not like it, it's okay. I will cry about it for a day, then I will get over it. But if you do like it, I'd love to talk. And she loved the idea. Thankfully was like, yes, the women need to be in the story. And those are great projects. And I think we should do it. So that's how the book happened. We'd been having classes for several months, and then the book entered the storyline. It was really important to me, though, that we not fake it. Granted, we dressed nicely for the photo shoot, and we were mostly sewing in yoga pants and t-shirts late at night in the actual classes. But I did not want to fake the timeline, because these were 8 real women with real families and real jobs. And I could not, say, well, I got a manuscript deadline, guys. We got to do all these projects in a week. So, Suzanne was very, very true to that storyline and said, we'll keep it the same. Here's when the manuscript can be due. And kind of happened that way. So
2 things. One is, I just think, having written book proposals myself, the ones where immediately exactly like the whole table of contents, you can write it in 5 minutes, versus the ones where you're struggling to write the table of contents, to create the sample project. That should give you that feedback, like as a signal as to which of these ideas is the right idea. So anyway, I think that happened to me as well. And I think you need to recognize in yourself, which one of these works. And so when it does flow that fast, there is that's a good sign. But the other thing is, when you spent the year with this group of women, were there things that you learned from them that got incorporated into the book that you didn't expect or didn't have, in that initial sort of sketch of what it was going to be?
I think that one of the things that I loved and I really valued getting from them is the fact that they didn't know each other at all. Like, a couple of them knew each other, but they all knew me. They didn't know each other. But the tips about building a community that way, I love weaving those in, but also their mistakes that happened along the way. Everybody had a project that did not go well for them. Like, everybody had that one. and they could all tell you which one it was. It was kind of different one for each of them, where they just were having an off night. And I loved being able to use those moments in the book to talk about, overcoming that and things to look out for, and weaving extra tips into the project instructions themselves, that if it was one of my regular patterns, I probably wouldn't have done as many tips as I did. I would have done some for sure, but just little things from sitting there with people who are brand new sewers. It's a different mindset and focus for your writing too, if it's a person who is brand new to sewing.
Yes, and teaching is very valuable that way as well, which is to say that you may not anticipate the mistakes and problems that people have, but when you teach in person and you've taught it to several groups, you see, this is where they run into trouble, and here's how you can prevent that trouble from happening, and it really strengthens the instructions.
Yep. It was an amazing experience, and I when the book came, it was like a yearbook signing party. We had everybody over and got to look at it, and they just them seeing all of it in print, and I'm just so proud of everything that they made and the things they've made since, and it was a really awesome experience. And the book, I mean, it was and is everything and more than I hoped it would be when I wrote that proposal. Like, it was, my voice was still there, the pictures, Lauren Hunt did an amazing job. It was just I love that book. I love it.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot from Lucky Spool authors, by the way.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah,
Yeah. And I don't hear
yeah.
that from authors of all publishing houses, I will
Well,
say.
I know that it was important to Suzanne that, that the people that I got, included. I think this is probably true of all of her authors, about included in, things like the cover and the title and just all of that. It was a really wonderful experience. I think we built our house, and people always say, "Oh, the process of building a house is so hard," and "Oh, the process of writing a book is hard." I really love both processes. I loved building our house. I loved writing the book. I loved being part of those experiences. So they're both things I would totally do again.
And people can take this book and they can either work through it independently if they want to learn to sew, because you really show them how to shop for a machine, how to shop for fabric. And these are things that are really overwhelming in the beginning, when you're just getting started in a new hobby or a new pursuit. Or people can take this book as a teacher and use it basically the way you had wanted, which was basically like a curriculum. Or if they're even just like a peer of friends and want to work together to work through it, like almost like a workbook sort of. So have you seen groups do all of those things?
Yes, I have. And it has been the coolest experience. I have had people who knew how to sew, but wanted to kind of refine some things. And they've written to me saying, I used your book, and I am kind of working through it and kind of reteaching myself some things. I've had a lot of men email me saying they've used it because it's not girly. It doesn't have skirts and there's one ruffle. They can omit the ruffle. But I've had a lot of men say they've been using it. I've had a lot of shops that will use it to teach beginning sewing classes, like in a series. And other people that are individuals that, get people in their neighborhood or get people in their local library or something to get together to sew. So all of those things. And every time I hear one, I think that is just awesome. The coolest one, though, one of my favorite stories was someone told me that their sister or sister-in-law used it to teach some women who were refugees to sew, to earn money for their families, to sew just simple projects, and use that. And when she told me, I would have never dreamed that someone would do that with a book. And I thought that's really powerful and meaningful. And I loved hearing that. So
yeah, it's so neat to see now it's in everybody's hands, what they can do with it.
Right. It's like to say something life of its own, it's like a kid, you have this vision for it, and then they kind of do their own thing too. So.
And I know you posted on Instagram not too long ago about another book proposal that you had put together in 2011, and it wasn't accepted. And I also wanted to talk about that because I also have put together a book proposal it was a few years after that, that didn't go anywhere. And I just think that very few people talk about the ones that don't go anywhere, where they spend so much time and effort and hope and dreaming about this and sending it off and waiting. And it gets, however far along the chain before it dies. And those ideas, I don't know, they linger. So what was that experience like for you, that one? I wrote it when we were living in San Diego, and looking back now, I know that it was good that it wasn't accepted. And like you said, like the ones that you write and like you just have everything on paper instantly, and you know exactly what it should be. That's the one where you know where your heart is. And that one was I liked doing the proposal. I would have loved the book, but it just didn't go. It kind of got quite a way through the process, and then it was it won't work, and I was sad. So I think that now, if that book had happened, School of Sewing would have never happened. I just know that it wouldn't have. So I think that it was a big blessing in disguise, and I think it is a great way to show. Like I kept that binder. I was sorting my sewing room. I think the picture you're talking about is I was sorting my sewing room and came across the binder that had the projects in it and the whole book proposal. And
illustrator images of what the projects would look like. And I almost pitched it because I was like, oh, well, that was an interesting time in my life, And so I kept it though, because I want to show my kids, like I put it right next to the manuscript of my book that ended up getting published. I put them next to each other on the shelf, like this, a failure or, a setback can absolutely be something to motivate you and be a blessing in disguise. So
that's so beautiful, for sure. So, and I think it's great that people, your willingness to share about one that didn't work, because
right.
I feel like that actually is part of almost everybody's story.
Oh yeah.
They have the things that didn't work, and
yes.
There's nothing to show for it,
Right.
So,
I feel like most people, maybe not everybody, maybe there are people who never have a dud, but most people would probably say there was always a project or a book or, whatever that was just a dud, it was like, oh, well, moving on.
Yeah, it didn't happen. Exactly. And that's not something to set you back permanently.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So on kind of a more upbeat note, also talking about your Instagram, can you speak about Operation Cinnamon Roll?
Oh, yes. So Operation Cinnamon Roll is something that happened kind of very unplanned several years ago. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember now. I had always wanted to make cinnamon rolls. I wanted to be able to have a good recipe to make cinnamon rolls. But like that book proposal, everything else I had tried to make with cinnamon rolls had been a dud. So I finally found a good recipe and I was so excited about it. So we started making cinnamon rolls for a few friends and neighbors a couple Christmases ago, and we would deliver them, and like kind of late at night, because it took a long day to make everything. And my husband would play guitar and we go sing, "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" at their doorstep and then leave. And now it's kind of like a thing, like we do it. And it's like, 15 families that we make cinnamon rolls for. And every year we do it. And it's super fun. Like we spend a day making them and then get in the car and deliver them. And then last year, my husband was out of town and I think one of my kids was a sleepover or whatever the day I made them. And so it was like me driving around with my littlest elf who had fallen asleep in the back seat. But it's really fun to show up at someone's doorstep and they know you're coming, You say, "Are you going to be home?" And then there you are with cinnamon rolls.
That's awesome. So maybe I can publish a link to, whether the recipe's online or in a cookbook, but either way, so people can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a woman named Kimberly, and her website is called The Driveway of Life. And if you Google Driveway of Life cinnamon rolls, she has a post and it has pictures, step by step. And it was the first time I've ever made them and thought, oh my gosh, this actually worked. So.
Okay. Now my mouth is watering. I'm like, I really want one.
And she's a very big proponent of lots of cream cheese frosting. So
yes. Agreed. Okay. So we have that. We'll count that as one of your recommendations because that's just delicious and sounds really good. So, but you do actually have a few other recommendations as well. And one of them is a journal called One Line a Day. And I am the worst journaler. I guess I'm a good blogger, but I'm not a good paper journaler.
Yes, I love this. It's called One Line a Day, and it's a 5-year journal. It's a little teal book with gold edges. And I first heard about it from Camille Ross Kelly, who is a fabric designer with Moda and writes her own patterns for her company's called Thimble Blossoms. And she posted about it many, many years ago. And I had been looking for a way to document things that my kids were doing or that I was doing, but I didn't want to. I couldn't journal like a whole page, there's no time. So it's 2 or 3 sentences a day. And what's cool about the book is that each page covers one day for 5 years in a row. So it'll say like January 1st at the top, and there's 5 spots. So January 1st, 2017, January 1st, 2018, they're all going to be on the same page. And so as you go through the book once, and then you go back through it, 5 times, and you can look back on that exact day 3 years ago, 3 years ago, Eleanor said this funny thing. Well, mine, I have things that my kids did, things that we did as a family, things I did as a business, like these patterns came today, or this happened for the book today. So it's interesting to see. You can use it as for if you're a parent with kids, you could use it professionally with whatever your career is. You could use it creatively, like to document what you worked on. I love it. And it's inexpensive and it's little. It's one of my favorite things to give as a gift to people. So
Yeah, I
it's
was
called
going to say, it sounds like a great baby
It's an
gift too.
awesome gift. Yes. And they make some that are like, now people have kind of caught on to it, and they make some that are, ones for kids and ones for, there's one, I think a pink one that has a little baby image on the front, but I like the traditional teal, the classic original one line a day. And I'm on my second one now. So it's been going for a while. I love giving it to people as a gift. So
yeah, it just reminds me, it's like the analog version of Facebook memories.
Totally. In fact, what's funny is I've actually used some of my Facebook memories to go back and fill in on days that I've missed. I keep it on my nightstand, and some days I'm better about putting something down than others. But if I forgive myself for forgetting a day or two, then I'm okay.
Yeah, forgiveness is important when you're trying to do something every day, for sure.
Yes.
Okay, and you wanted to recommend the Young House Love podcast. So I have listened to the Young House Love podcast a couple of times, and the ones that I've listened to have been really good. So do you want to talk a little bit about what this podcast is and why you like it?
Sure. So the Young House Love website was one I followed for many years. They updated and DIY'd their house, and then it became a very, very big thing. And then they stepped away from their blog completely. And I thought that was really interesting. And they were, interviewed by several newspapers about why they stepped away from their blog. But then in recent years, they've come back and they've started a podcast, and they still blog occasionally, but I think they've turned off their comments, which was, I think a lot to maintain because they were responding to everything. So their podcast is awesome. I love that they're just very jovial and friendly and cover lots of different topics and quirky. I loved on their blog how when Sherry, it's John and Sherry, they're a married couple, Sherry would talk about wanting to learn to use her sewing machine, and she called it "Oh Brother." And so she would write about the mishaps with her sewing machine. And I actually had her in mind as I wrote my book, like that's a person who I would want to read this book because I would want her to succeed. And right about the time they stepped away from her blog, I emailed her and I said, "Hey, I've got this book. Can I send it to you?" And so she's like, "Oh my gosh, sure." So I emailed her and I sent it to her, and then she wrote back that they got it and she loves it. And she's kind of sewn a couple things. And I keep waiting for her to maybe say that she's sewing because I would love to hear how she's doing with her sewing machine. Mm-hmm. But I love hearing the projects as they work on their houses. And it's a lot about paint colors and arranging rooms, but not in a fancy highfalutin way, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And it's like highly produced. I mean, it's much more produced than this show, for example. They've got like musical interludes and
game show sound effects.
Things I don't have, which I'm always like really impressed by when other people have them. I'm like, wow, that's a really nicely produced show. So, okay, good one. And then you also wanted to recommend a what you're calling a seam gauge or a cloth guide.
Yes. And different companies call them different things, but what it is, and if people are picturing their sewing machine, it lays on the flat bed of your sewing machine and it screws in, or they do make magnet versions, but mine is I also on a Janome, and you screw it into the base of the sewing machine, but it's like a T-shaped guide, the letter T, and it helps guide your fabric along to go into the feed dogs. And if you want to have a perfect 1/2-inch seam allowance, you can adjust it so it's a 1/2 inch. And I absolutely love it. Mine's permanently attached to my sewing machine. You could use it for a 1/4 inch too, although I typically use my 1/4 inch foot more that way. But I love, love, love using it, especially if you're sewing with curves and a 1/2 inch seam allowance on clothing. It makes it easy to make sure you're not like, going all wonky, but they're an inexpensive thing. And between that and an extension table, I think those two things make a big difference in enjoyment of sewing.
Yeah. And we'll definitely link to that so people can see what it looks like and see whether they think it would be good on their machine.
Yeah.
Super cool. I don't have one, so I'm going to take a look as well.
If you sew very many 1/2 inch seams, I think it's super useful.
Okay. Good to know. Well, Shea, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the While She Naps podcast. I really enjoyed talking to you.
I have enjoyed talking to you immensely, Abby. Thank you so much.
And you've been listening to the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Visit my blog, whileshenaps.com, where you can sign up for my email newsletter to get the best in sewing, blogging, and small business delivered right to your inbox each week. Today's episode was sponsored by Peddlers. Did you know you can have high quality custom pins and charms made especially for your group or business? Pin Peddlers will help you create the perfect statement piece to let the world know who you are. Shop owners, give them a call about wholesale opportunities as well. Save 15% off your next order from pinpeddlers.com by using the code NAPS, N-A-P-S. Pin Peddlers, love what you do, wear what you love. Thank you so much, Pin Peddlers. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.